lights up the new scoreboard.
Would you say that's the best clap of the year?
Got meaty hands going on here.
Swing and a miss on a changeup down.
It is a changeup, and it is ridiculous.
Why are you leaning in on me? Do I have to lean in too?
Turns, throws, got it, what a play! Oh, man!
This is Have a Seat with Jason Benetti and Dan Dickerson, presented by Figer Law.
You know, we figured for the last episode, last episode of the regular season, we would have some of our favorite folks, our favorite media members.
Fellow broadcasters.
Yeah, fellow broadcasters.
Yeah.
Is that what we should call them?
Where are they?
Yeah, right. Favorites and fellows. Dan Petry, Andy Dirks are our dueling guests today to talk about what in the world are we watching right now? What is this in front of us? And once this airs, it'll be Thursday, so the standings will be maybe a little bit different. But
It's a 28-11 stretch.
yeah, that.
For a team that was 55-63 at the time this started. And it's been so fun to do these games with you guys because we're
That's Dan's opinion.
Each day we're looking at each other like, what are we watching? But it seems like there are moments every single day, 4, 5, 6 moments in a game or more that if they don't happen, the Tigers don't win. And it's just been fun to watch with you guys. What do you think we're watching though?
Well, it's something that you're not going to see every year. Obviously, we know that because it's been a few since we've been in a run, postseason run. You can start with the bullpen or the starting pitching or the offense or the youth kind of coming up. There's just a lot of factors that have come into play, like a symphony, an orchestra. You got the string section, you got the percussion, and everybody seems to be beating on the same beat right now, where that's not the way it always works. We always say, well, if the offense would have performed better, we would have won. If the pitching would have performed better, we would have won. If the defense was better. To get all the elements clicking for an extended period of time, as you guys know, it's very difficult to do. And that's kind of what we're seeing. We're just seeing guys who have made choices. I think of the ball that Trey Sweeney caught. And a few games before, in Kansas City, the ball drops out in the Bermuda Triangle. And there's decisions that players have to make before plays are made. Like, ever since that ball dropped into Kansas City, Trey Sweeney said he made a decision. I don't care what happens to me, life or limb. Any ball that goes in that vicinity ever again,
And
I'm
this
going
is just
to catch.
a couple days later.
A couple days later, he gets an opportunity. And he had already made that decision. And this is what successful teams have done. They've made a decision that they're not worried about all the outside circumstances and all this. They have made a decision in their mind on this given play. If this is what needs to happen, I'm going to do it. Parker Meadows in center. They dropped the fly ball the game before. The next one goes up. He robs it over the fence. So it's like you see how quickly they make adjustments to, at this level in the big leagues, you have to make a decision on, am I not just going to play hard, but am I going to do what it takes to execute the plays that are required or the at-bat that's required for our team to succeed?
Peach is like, you've seen teams have success and not over the course of your time here in Detroit. Have you ever seen a collection of young talent together find spots to be successful in and execute like this one? There are like 12 rookies on the roster right now.
And that's kind of the turning point. And, I go back and look at spring training and say, okay, what has transpired since spring training to get the Tigers to this point? And I thought no worse than 500 going into spring training. There's no worse than 500. Then you start, as you reflect back, and you start thinking about AJ, okay, and the little things that he was doing as far as resting his pitchers, resting his players to keep everybody strong for this to happen. But when the young guys were called up, and that's what to me is so amazing, and their contribution to this, I mean, they're just fighting to show, hey, can I stay in the big leagues? Trey Sweeney, to your point, wasn't even a member of this organization 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Now, he wasn't a shortstop for the Dodgers. He gets called up. Now he's thrust in, and he's playing the shortstop, one of the most important positions there is on the diamond for a team that's fighting for the wild card. So that's the thing that you're saying, wow, these young kids are fighting to stay in the big leagues, but now they're fighting to win. And with the couple of veterans, say Spencer Torkelson and Riley Green, who've only been up for a couple of years, but you put that group together and now you're saying, okay, I kind of see how they've gotten to this point. And remember the way that they finished last year and how AJ just got them and just turned the screws for them to finish in second place. So you look back and it's like, maybe it's not as surprising as we think it should be.
I think that the fun part of that is that team finished 19-10 to get to 78 wins. So they were below the 500 mark the whole time.
Yep.
I know that AJ wanted to say, okay, let's get above the 500 mark and play some meaningful games in September, above the 500 mark, and see how we handle that versus this is just kind of, hey, we can beat the good team, play with house money. And now I think that's got to be the most satisfying part for him, is that these guys are playing above the 500 mark, playing in meaningful games. And then it's just a reflection of all that hard work that goes in every single day.
Yeah.
And every team talks about paying attention to the basics and not giving away 90 feet, but they don't all live it. And it just seems like this team is living it.
There's not a play that I've seen made recently that either one, if there was a mistake made, they learned from it quickly.
Yeah.
Overall, solid baseball. I mean, it's fun to watch. You know, you see guys making plays at third base. You see guys running the bases like wild men. I mean, they are banshees on the bases. Some of the slides, it's just a very athletic team.
Well, Jake Rogers runs the bases like he is Jackie Joyner-Kersee.
He does.
You know, like he thinks he runs a 4.2 40.
And he, in his head, he thinks he does. And he will probably say, I'm going to go, you know, try out for a receiver at Tulane. I'm super fast. But his demeanor is to be aggressive. And that's like default aggressive on this team is all you see. It's like, when in doubt, be aggressive. Because I know I'm not going to get reprimanded by my manager. And Cora's over there going like, go, 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 go. And if you don't, then you'll get chewed out. If you go and you get out, hey, it's all good. That frees these guys up to just go use their athleticism. Go run, have fun, play baseball.
Yeah. So I wonder, for all three of you, and I get to ask you questions in this podcast format because we have our colleagues here and our partners.
Do I get to ask you questions?
No.
Oh, no question. Yeah, you do. Yeah.
Hold on. Let me pull out my list.
Go sell a house. So, what one moment in the last month most typifies this team?
I would go right to two because
I got
it's just,
three.
Yeah.
I know.
I just said one.
I know.
No,
I got one.
You
I
can't
got one.
because
You can't condense it
it's
down
like
to one.
One was the
four of
one.
us.
One was the
You all have to
one.
pick one.
But it got topped
We'll
a few
debate
days
them.
later.
Don't put Dan in a box. Let him fly.
The San Diego with Suarez down 3-0 in the ninth inning with the bases loaded.
The grand slam.
Yes, firing 102.
Yeah.
And Parker Meadows
Yes.
swinging in late on the 3-1 fastball and stepping out and just gathering himself and saying, all right, just take a breath, slow it down. I mean, slow it down. How do you do that? Instead of trying to meet his velocity, by stay back. That's unbelievable to me. That win, because you're about to get swept.
Yeah.
And that delivered a win. That's a moment. That's one of the greatest moments I've seen in many years. And then, to me, the getting out of the ninth inning jam in Baltimore in Game 2, you're in danger, real danger. I'm thinking, I don't know, you guys were all there, just like, that game's over 99% of the time. You've lost a 4-2 lead, second and third, nobody out. Crowd's going crazy, 2-3-4 coming up, and you bring in Brisket, and he gets those guys, three guys out with that great play by Sweeney. That's a moment to me, and it's just,
No doubt.
It just
No doubt.
highlights what the last 7 weeks have been like.
Now that Dan took two of them, do you have any left? Or?
I do, because those
That's
those
why we don't
two
ask each other questions.
those two are two out of my three. I couldn't agree more. But I'll go back to just before the All-Star break, and I was working pre and post. And I remember when it happened, I said, just remember this as a turning point. If anything happens with this season, look at this as a turning point. And the Tigers were in Cincinnati, and Hunter Green was shutting them out for 7 innings on 3 hits. And Parker just came back. I'm not sure if he got hurt that game or the next day, but he's starting to come back, and they're feeling a little better. But Wenzel Perez came off and pinch hit 2-run homer to tie the game. And they went on to beat the bullpen, and they end up winning that game 5-3. Tarek Skubal goes out the next day. They announced that he's going to be on the All-Star team. So he's like, hey, I got something to prove. That's when he started
He had a game.
the screaming. I mean, showing that emotion that we've gotten used to, and I look back on that because the team was floundering. They lost 3 out of 4 in Anaheim, 2 out of 3 in Minnesota, and then they sweep the Reds. And it was right at that time. They were still below 500, but it was like, wait a minute, we're only like 4 or 5 games below 500. We can get hot and we can do something here. And so other than those, that was one that really stuck out to me, was that game in Cincinnati.
That's a good one. It's earlier, but that's a good one.
It is.
Those are great. I mean, everybody's contributing. Like you see, there's just been so many moments. Torkelson goes down, comes back up, starts producing better. Same thing with Parker. Like, there was just a lot of question marks, and then you see guys come up with huge plays, and that's the way these Tigers are rolling right now. Everybody contributes.
This one preceded immediately a series loss, so I'm a little hesitant to say turning point. But I gotta say, and I wasn't there, so I need you to speak to this, but Williamsport, it was a Yankees show, right? Like, you send a team to Williamsport.
Were they spending more time on the Yankees?
It's not even about that. I'm just saying, like, you send the Yankees to Williamsport, they are the headliner.
Yeah.
And I don't mean any disrespect to the Tigers or to Major League Baseball by saying that. The Yankees are typically, no matter who they're playing, the headliner. They lead, and they're going to put the game away. And then the Tigers, with these really new guys at that point.
They'd just been called up
Jace
2
Young,
days
Trey
before.
Sweeney, Torque just comes back, like all of this. They put together a rally that is more fit for a little league team. You know what I mean? Like, and you're around all those kids. And I do just wonder, like, being in that environment and being around those kids, I just wonder if that did something to fuel this. And I know it's a little conjecture, but as I was sitting there watching it and I think back to that moment, I just can't help but think that was important to the fabric of this season too.
Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely. And you hear more than a few people mention that game and how they won it. And again, the aggressive base running. Dominguez getting the ball in left field. McKinstry, what? He's going home?
Does anybody here do a good Joey Cora impression? Sending somebody?
I mean,
because it's like,
yeah, he just points really, really rapidly.
yeah. I don't know how, he's got to be a great typist, right? Like, he's got to just be able to, like,
I don't think he probably hits the right keys, though. And you get done, and you're like, you can't even read it. This guy's right.
Yeah, who was it when went first to third the other day? And he was just about to go.
It was Wenzel, right? He was hanging out, and Joey was like,
no, he's got it.
He willed him onto the bag. It was like using the force, man.
Yeah.
Stay on there.
But he has been a force behind all of this in terms of just the aggressiveness, but thinking about it. And it started with the youth movement in late July, early August. But going first to third to me is the best sign of a good base running team. And this team went first to third half the time in August. The league average is below a third of the time.
That is the Fiddleman stat of the year. You know that?
That is. It was a great stat. Ben Fiddleman came up with it. But it is. That is the sign. But it's led by Joey Cora, his aggressiveness. AJ loves it, I think. But the players, once it starts going, think of Vierling going first to third in the face of Benintendi in Chicago. But then just on the last road trip, Riley Green going first to third in the face of Mullins, who's charging in center field. And the great swim move for the second time on the road trip, Perez did it in Kansas City, to get around the tag. But right in the face, that was a non-obvious first to third.
Oh, yeah.
And it led to a huge run.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in on that, because that Williamsport just made me think about, you talk about the little
as the best
things.
celebrity endorser of the Have a Seat podcast that we have, you can jump in whenever.
I've seen every one of them. Seen every one of them.
Dan Petry's presented by Figer Law.
4 views. Dan and all of his devices. He's got a laptop, an iPad, a phone, and what's your other one? I don't know.
Petey's got an Apple Watch.
Oh, there it is.
Dog.
He's coming to the game tonight.
Is he?
Can't we? Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, we'll be up there watching, rooting him on. He's got a costume and everything. So,
You were saying.
But no, the Williamsport game is, talk about little things, the kids and everything, inspiring them. But think about, they had to go and catch a flight at what, 8 a.m. To get there. Then there was no time for a nap or anything. They just went right on those buses, hung out with the kids, did all that, and then they had to go.
Went down the hill.
Yes, all the things behind, but then to go out and beat the Yankees, and of course Skubal was on the mound, but they'd been up, and you know that the coaching staff was just driving it home. Let's not forget, you know, the reason we came here. We came here to have a good time, but still, you know, we've got to win this game. And that first to third, I just keep thinking about that, and you can tell that that's a big stat, and it's something that they really harp on. But the little things is watch those teams, watch how they cut the bases. They cut the corners, and that's the reason they can be aggressive. And to get that stat is because of those little secondary leads have to be very good, you know, and get that good secondary hop off there to be able to go first to third and also cut those. So those little tiny little things and two little, you know, yes, yeah.
Okay, whenever you ask somebody like who the biggest surprise is, it can end up being demeaning to the person because you're like, wow, we thought they were going to stink. That's not what I mean by this question. I mean, this question is very intentional, like who, based on what we had seen before this year, has taken the most remarkable jump, right? Whether it's their first at bat, their first appearance, whatever. Who, and I will say this, the reason I ask this question is because as we're taping this, Keider Montero is going to pitch tonight. And just in front of my eyes, and again, I've just been here for the year, but in front of my eyes, he was spraying it so much the first start, the second start, right? It was
the minor leagues.
And in the minor leagues, right. I just think what he's become developmentally from that position is a reason to ask this question, because I do think part of what's happened here this year is that there have been jumps that are unnatural for most average players in Major League Baseball in specific ways. So I'll start with Montero. I think the best answer is still on the board.
Well, why wouldn't you give the best answer?
Because I was trying to stir conversation. What normally our guests aren't as hostile as you two. So
Are Gunther,
everybody else is happy to be here, and these guys are firing. It's like
are Gunther,
good
Herter, and Hanafi off the board?
no, they can be on the board.
I mean, because the job that those guys have done has really, without those guys doing what
Unsung
they've done
heroes.
coming up, because we had no real starters.
There was no
For
obvious
Reese,
solution.
when Reese got hurt, it was like Montero, Skubal, and like I don't know. Like people would ask me, I don't know. It's not my job. You know, Scott and AJ are going to have to figure this out in a hurry though. And that when they started going with the Bolt guy, because you see numbers in AAA, you see numbers in the minor leagues, and you're like, man, that's rough. This is a hard level. The big leagues is different. But the way those guys have come up and performed in huge spots, I mean huge spots, just blows my mind. And it's kudos to them for excelling in those roles. Kudos to the staff for putting them in positions of success. Yeah. I think probably a combination of both. And probably kudos to the other players, because I do think that when you get around winning people and winning environments, like this bullpen's been pretty good all year, and you start sitting around and hanging out with these guys who have been proving, the Tyler Holtons, the Briskies, the Foleys, like this is the new standard that now you're living up to. The old standard was here. This is the new standard, and you're either on the ship or you're off the ship. And I think those guys have all stepped up to a much higher standard of play.
I'll certainly say Parker Meadows, but I'm not going to, because I'm going to say bulk guy.
That's what I thought would be the best answer too, would be
Bulk
Parker
guy.
Meadows. That's why I said.
I knew that's where you were thinking. My choice is bulk guy, because this turnaround to me happened when there was only two starters. It was Tarek Skubal and Keider Montero. And you got to remember Salmons, the job that he did, and Brant Herter, and Ty Madden, and Kenta Maeda. Those four, because when they went to that, if those guys didn't perform and they didn't get through those 4, 5, sometimes 6 innings to give that bullpen, keep them strong to be able to get to the back end and solidify and close out games. If those bulk guys didn't do their job, I don't know if this ever would have worked. So I'm going to say bulk guy.
Yeah, and the openers for those guys, at one point, we haven't updated in a few opens, but at one point it was 31 innings, I think 18 opens, 31 innings, 4 earned runs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
To
like
set
Holton and
those
Brisky,
guys
we're
up.
just used to that.
Right,
It's like
right.
they go out, they just
6 up, 6 down,
Holton,
big
yeah,
deal.
okay, that inning's over.
I would go with I think Wenzel Perez.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was my
another
other
good
choice.
one. Yeah.
It's just because he was on nobody's radar in the spring, really. I mean, he was going to be a nice piece maybe at AAA, and if need be, and then he comes up and He's just done so many things well. It's not eye-popping numbers, but he does so many things well. AJ said he'd be the best base runner on the team when he came up, and I think he arguably is best base runner on this team.
Yeah.
And just the transition to the outfield. He had 30 games in the outfield before this year.
I mean, you heard it on podcasts. Like, you guys heard it when sometimes he'd get hit a fly ball and he'd go, oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I will say I love the roundtable format. You know what I miss, though, from our typical podcast, Dan?
What?
Is the really deep questions to our guests.
How deep did you go?
Should we ask? So,
Oh, no.
Andy, let's start with you.
Yes. Why are you leaning in on me? Do I have to lean in too?
Yeah, that's
How close do we
Do I
get?
have to lay down on the couch or something?
What's your greatest fear?
My greatest fear in life. My greatest fear is that I have no fear.
That's like when people say, why shouldn't we hire you? And the answer is like, well, I work too hard.
I just work so hard, you shouldn't hire me. I just do everything so great. The only thing to fear, Benetti, is fear itself.
Dan, if you were going to be anything other than a baseball player, what would you have been?
It would have been some sort of law enforcement. It would
Really?
have been, yep. And I still have several friends. They're retired, but that were Michigan State Police, and they've always been somebody that I've looked up to. But I wanted to I was just infatuated by the FBI and Secret Service and all that kind of stuff. So it might have been law enforcement. of
Could
some
you
kind.
see him like, you would have had to have been the good cop every
Yeah,
time.
look at him.
He'd be like Roger Murtaugh. I'd be more like Riggs, you know, in Lethal Weapon. You remember?
Yes.
Would you be more Riggs or Roger? Maybe when you were younger, he might have been Riggs when he was younger.
There you go. There
You
you
know?
go.
Were you mean when you were
Remember Mel
younger?
Gibson?
Maybe I didn't have the same kind of fear now. You know,
I mean, pitchers have to be a little bit different.
I might have been. I might not have had as much fear and just a little.
Yeah.
more,
I bet he's
So-
he's undercover. He's an undercover Riggs for sure. Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon.
What would you have been?
What would I have been? Out of high school, I wanted to join the military.
Really?
That was I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. That was like seriously. I used to do like training for that specifically, and my mom talked me out of it. I had a,
You trained for that?
Well, yeah, I would get in the bathtub, fill it full of cold water, and hold my breath as long as I could, like stuff like that.
Who among us hasn't done that?
I mean, that's a normal thing to do. The issue is, and this is where my mom is very intelligent. So apparently, to be a Navy SEAL, you must swim very well. I'm from Kansas.
Notably
You know,
landlocked.
You know.
No ocean within like hundreds of miles. So the first time I went to was like at an ocean was in spring training in Florida, and I went out and I looked at that Gulf, and I couldn't see the other side. It was the first time I'd ever seen like big water like that, and I remember thinking, "Oh, thank you, Mom," because there is no way that I'd be able to go out there and swim for like 10 miles. And I would even get freaked out that there might be a shark under me or something, you know? So, Mama Dirks, if you watch this, thank you.
Love that. Both of you, your best day as a Tiger ever. Best one single day as a Tiger.
Wow. You go first.
All right. So, my default, and it's default for good reason because it probably is my best moment, it was when we won the ALCS, beat the Yankees, which was incredible in of itself, right? But my family, my dad and mom came down on the field. And my family, my mom and dad are from like, we're small town people. They're from like small town Iowa, never seen big, you know.
How
they didn't
small?
Small is like, we're outside of a town, we're about 8 miles outside of a town of about 1,000 people.
So you're in the suburbs of a town of 1,000.
But the suburbs would be a dirt road. Our closest neighbor is about a half mile down the dirt road. Like that's just, it's grid, you know, it's the squares in Kansas, right? My dad had never flown on an airplane until we made it to the postseason. Or he might have they came one time in the minor leagues. They flew on, that's the first time. My mom's always like, you always got us outside of our box, our comfort zone. But they come down on the field and my dad, you know, loved baseball, grew up. He was actually a pretty good athlete. My mom was a really good athlete too, but you know he had to work when he was 18. He tried out for, I think went to a Reds tryout once. They invited him back, but he's like, I got to go to work. So he's down on the field, and we're looking up there, and there's like 50,000 screaming Detroit fans. Let's go. They're still just getting after it, The trophy ceremony, they're getting everything set up, and my dad leans over and he's like, "Hey Andy, was like, yeah, Dad. He's like, how in the world did you do this? And I was like, I have no idea. To this day, that is like the best moment, you know, when my dad was like, this is pretty cool. You know, so cool. I'm proud of you, son. Good job.
That's awesome.
That to me was pretty special.
Then do they get to fly on the plane with you? Because families
Yeah,
get to fly on the plane.
we flew on the plane.
Which is the best.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. They flew around. They had a ball. It was a good time.
Yeah.
That's
really good
awesome.
time.
You know, that just had so many, and sorry it took me a little bit, but I wanted to come up something other than, winning the World Series and watching Larry Herndon catch the final out and getting off to a 35 and 5 star. You know, those kind of things.
All of
you
those
know.
small things.
The obvious.
You know,
I'm pain.
you know, and your first major league win, I could brought my dad back, but the first thing that jumped into my head was the fact of just being drafted by the Tigers, because I look back on it now and think everything that has ever happened in my life led to being lucky enough to be drafted and signing and becoming a Detroit Tiger and winning and playing here for the good number of years, making Michigan my home, you know, and both our kids were born here, and my wife and I both are from California, thought that we'd never settle here, but we have, and all of that's ever happened, the greatest things that have happened to both of us is all because of Michigan, and it all started with being drafted by the Tigers.
And you were 17 and you didn't find out until the next day.
The next morning when my mom came in, and had the newspaper, hey Dan, knocking on the door, you know, you were drafted by the Tigers, yeah. Okay, great, go, I'm sleeping.
Can you imagine that?
That's
You don't find out till the next day.
Yeah, that's wild.
In the
Waiting to
newspaper.
reading and going down. And what,
Yeah, I found out on a bus headed to, we were playing Florida State in a super regional. And they told me it was the second day of the draft, and we're on the bus, and the pitching coach, Brent Kimnitz, was like, hey, Dirks, congratulations, you're going to the show. Well, not quite, you got drafted. Like in classic, my pitching coach, Brent Kimnitz, our pitching coach, he's a beauty, man. He was awesome.
What did you think about getting drafted by the Tigers?
At the time, I mean, I just wanted to get drafted. I had no clue where I'd get drafted as a senior. You know, I didn't have any leverage. It was one of those situations where I put together a pretty good year. My senior year, I wanted to keep playing baseball. I needed to because I quit going to my 9 a.m. class that year.
Only the 9 a.m. though. We went to the rest of
I did, because
9
you had
a.m.
to
is
stay
really
eligible. You know? But I went to the class. It was some sports class, supposed to be an easy A, and it was like Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9. I told the professor after the first week, I'm like, I'm so sorry, I've never failed a class, but I'm about to fail this one. I'm out. And I just quit showing
You
up.
couldn't even get the 1-0?
No. She tried to help me, and I was like, I don't want help. I'm training. So I'd wake up in the morning and I'd go train instead of going there, because my vision was I need to get drafted. Like that was my next goal, and that didn't align with my goal at the time. So
What round were you hoping to go in?
I was hoping, basically, I thought it was going to be more like 20th type of rounds, just because I'm a senior. But David Chad, who used to be the scouting director with the Tigers, is from Wichita.
Yeah.
He's really close with Brent Kimnitz, and the story goes something like, you know, David Chad calls Brent Kimnitz, where would you draft Dirks if you were going to draft him? He said, I don't know, where would you have drafted Lenny Dykstra? That's exactly the comment that he had for
Nice.
him, and then that's when the Tigers took me in the 8th. I was like, whoa, and they gave me like $22,000, and I was like, whoa, way more than I was like, you know, the $1,000 in a meal ticket. So apparently, I had more stock than I thought. I didn't even know I was.
What'd you spend it on?
I paid off my student loans.
For the classes you didn't go to?
For the class I didn't go to.
right.
Yep, paid off my student loan debt, and I had like $5,000 left in my bank, and then used that to get through the minor leagues.
What was your bonus?
18.
1,000?
100.
Yeah, you're right.
Dollars.
18,000. 18,000.
What'd you spend it on?
I,
That street sign that has your name on it in
That's
California?
right. Yeah, that's right. I had to buy that. That was. I spent 5,000 of it on a car. After my first year, after instructional league, bought a car down in Florida and drove it back to California.
What car, what color?
Banana yellow.
See, Riggs.
Me and
Roger Murtaugh would not have bought a yellow car.
Tram and I both bought the same car, the Toyota Silicas.
You both bought banana yellow Celicas?
No, his was like a gold color. Mine was flashier, I guess. And that was kind of frowned upon if you think about it. So those.
You were the glitzy guy in the clubhouse?
Well, no, and then I moved to the Trans Am, Dan's Trans.
Dan.
You know,
What year was it? What year was your Trans Am?
78.
81?
81.
I had a 78 Trans Am in high school.
Did you? Yeah.
really?
The T-tops.
72.
Yeah,
72
400 big
Camaro.
block, 350 turbo. It was
Why do you start
legit.
talking like this when you're talking
Because
about
that's when you're
driving?
driving. That's American muscle, Benetti. American muscle.
Camaros and Trans Ams were the cars.
Yeah, those were sweet. Those were sweet. Everybody had muscle cars where I came from.
At 6 miles to the gallon, the 72 Camaro that we had.
Yep, that's about
Really?
right.
Wow.
Yeah, 6, 7. It might have been 7. 7 on the freeway.
Depending on how you drove.
This is why people come to this podcast. Miles per gallon.
Yep.
Miles per
See,
gallon.
now that's a good question for us. What was your first car?
My first car that I owned, I had a Ford Focus.
Yeah, there you go. See.
Ford Focus.
What was the car before you owned the
Well, I
car?
used my parents' cars
Oh,
for a
okay,
while,
yeah,
you know, like.
yeah,
But we were
got
a
it.
Ford family. My grandfather worked for Ford, and so I actually did not know how to negotiate a car price, because we got the Z plan because my grandfather worked in the Ford factory for a long time. So I'd walk into the dealership with my family and be like, "My grandpa works for Ford. What's the price?"
Yeah.
Right. So I didn't know about all this haggling stuff. So I showed up at the dealership.
They just
and I was
wore
like,
you out.
what is this? This is work. I thought it was like buying
you have a
pancake
sticker
batter.
right
You're just
on
like,
it?
yeah, it just says the number.
Right.
Naive little Benetti.
Hey,
Now he's taking
They got
my
you.
keys.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. This is terrible. If you were going to do a TED Talk on being a good father, what would the headline one piece of advice be, the best piece of advice? Because I know how much both of you care about your kids. Andy or Dan?
yeah, that's best piece of advice of being a father. Love them. I mean,
That's it.
you know, I have found out I was such a good dad before I had kids. Like I had it figured out. I was the guy in the store, like when the kid's throwing a fit on the ground. I'd never let my kids do that. Get control of your kids. What's wrong with you people, right? You got it all figured out, and then they come out and you love them to death, and then all of a sudden they start talking. And whoa, does it change in a hurry. But just relentlessly love them, you know, care for them, care about what they're into, be engaged. Like that's where sometimes it's not always easy, but it's like, I have to be involved in what they're involved with because I love them. I don't necessarily always like playing Legos for 14 hours straight, but sometimes we do, right?
Yeah, you do.
There's a part of me that likes it, but
Your brain.
the amount of they can do the same thing for hours.
Yeah.
Like they get into Legos and then we're building Legos.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love them.
Dan?
I think along the same lines is you want to do everything you can for your kids, and you want them to be successful, and you love them so much that when they have children, that they will do an even better job, love them even more, and have their children be even more successful than your own.
So what's the
that's what I
best
would-
advice for grandpas?
Best advice. I had a wish. I think it was I hope I last long enough to see how successful they're going to be.
Look at his
Aw.
face light up.
You know,
That's
because I know my mom and dad got to see, you know, both the boys and be successful at what they did, and I know how they were beaming, and I just hope that I can do the same thing. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
if it's sports or whatever it is. Just
Oh yeah, I don't care what they're
Yeah,
doing.
yeah.
If they're into like Deacon's not as into sports. I mean he'll play. Just everybody's got God-given abilities that are different, you know, for good reason. So whatever they're into, I don't care if they, you know, CEO of a Fortune 500, Major League Baseball player, want to go to the military, pick up trash for a living, you name it. Like as long as they enjoy it and do it, rock and roll.
you're going to be proud.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I haven't got a chance to ask you this on the podcast, but on that bobblehead day,
Yeah. Don't get me going on this.
No. It's important. It's important. This podcast has meant a lot to a lot of people, I think, including us, right? And we don't get to ask each other the big questions because we're too busy interviewing the other people. But we're talking about fatherhood here, so we might as well. When you saw your kids down on the field getting ready to throw that pitch,
Oh my God!
where was your heart?
Think about how rarely. I'm 65. You get surprised by something that happens in your day. I mean, truly, genuinely surprised.
Yeah.
Lydia, Ben, the stops that were pulled out on this day, I'm thinking it's just bobblehead day, and it's nice, very nice that they're doing this. I didn't know it was going to turn into a celebration of 25 years. So
Of you.
There was just constant surprises, correct. 25 years in the booth. So my kids both surprised me by coming in. And then I'm doing TV that day, which turns out to be perfect because this would not have happened on radio. It's like, Dan, we're going to have, that was the weekend of the NFL draft, we're going to have Trevor Thompson do the open today. I'm like, well, that's kind of weird.
Oh, because the draft's happening.
Yeah, the draft's happening. It's going to be Paint the Scene in downtown Detroit.
But
He's
notably,
gonna-
if they ever tell you as the TV play-by-play person that somebody else is doing something out of break, it's a trap.
Yes, it is.
It's a trap.
Mr. Newbie to TV isn't thinking anything other than, okay, that's cool, because it has been quite a scene down here in downtown Detroit this weekend with the draft. And then they go, okay, we're going to Trev. Dan, take your headset off and take a look. And then they had the video on the board, kind of just going through my, a little video tribute. And they show us with our kids who are 1, not even, and 4 at Tiger Stadium. Then here's Justin and Rachel to throw the first pitch.
Yeah.
So that you see the babies up there, and then you see them walk out. Whew,
Yeah.
that got me. Sorry, I just did the microphone thing. That got me.
Nothing breaks the tension like a bass drum directly into your ear.
But I can feel that
Oh my
from
gosh.
what you just described. That's
And
beautiful.
the fact that they had sent me all kinds of signals, like Rachel's like, yeah, Dad, I had thrown a baseball the other day. Rachel, and she was a good softball player, had a good arm. But she hadn't thrown a ball in 15 years. I'm like, oh, that's fun. You went out and threw, you went out and threw with your boyfriend. That's really cute. And Justin's, when Justin was home a few weeks before, he's like, Dad, how far is 60 feet 6 inches?
So they're
You're like
dropping
front lawn. We
breadcrumbs.
don't ever play catch. And he's like, how far is, we're just playing catch because I like to play catch. And I told him, let's go play catch. He's like, yeah, let's do it. How far is 60 feet 6 inches? I step it off. I'm just curious.
You know,
Like
like
this is
have you ever watched Murder, She Wrote, where you're yelling at the screen? It was Sam that did it. Did you?
So yeah, that was quite a moment. I was, the only advice they got the whole time was don't bounce it and don't F it up.
Yeah.
That was all they got. So,
All right. So on that subject,
yeah.
bringing it back to the Tigers.
Yep.
It's a simple question, but it's a deep question. Of all of the players on this roster, coaching staff, whatever, if you had to pick one person that you are happiest for, just happiest for as a person, as an observer, watching them and their existence, who are you happiest for? Dan?
Wow. So many thoughts came into my mind, but you know what? I'm going to go the one that is just hanging in there, hanging. And I'm going to say AJ. I'm going to say
my
AJ
first
because
reaction.
of he's been through a lot, and he's owned up to everything, and it hasn't maybe gone as quite the way he wanted or as fast as he wanted, but look where he is now. And he's put his heart and soul into this organization, and it's starting to show. And hopefully he gets it over the hump. Which, do we have any doubt? I don't think
No.
we have
No,
any
that's
doubt.
fine.
I feel
No
real
reason
good
to.
about it, but
Exactly.
this
You
could
never
be
know. You
freezing
never-
cold takes, like
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah.
It's the peril of taping on Wednesday, but
Yeah.
You never know. But yeah, I'm going to say AJ. Yeah.
I had all that time to think, but I was listening to Dan.
that is hard. I know that's hard.
Happiest for, I mean, there's all the guys, all the organization, but just off the top of my head, I would probably say Trey Sweeney, because he's moving teams, he's filling a spot in a lineup that's kind of been talked about a little bit in Detroit
Yeah.
recently over the course of this year. And, stepping into that, and plus he's a piece of the trade, and not everybody was super on board with that. And now he's going into a spot that's been under the microscope all year, and he's coming in and he's contributing and helping a team win after all of these thoughts could easily, I mean, you put most guys in that spot, that's so much pressure, so much, coming new team. And so I'm happy for Trey that he's playing well and contributing the way he is.
Yeah. My first thought was AJ as well. Parker Meadows, just because of his story arc this season.
Torque, Park.
7 for 73,
Yep.
and then come back and really leading this team in so many ways. Base running, clutch hitting, the defense is off the charts. But I go back to AJ just because he lives baseball 24/7.
Yeah.
He has relentlessly tried to get this team to be a winning team. And it hasn't worked the first 3 years, and it wasn't working this year. But he never, ever deviates from his daily approach, which works. The whole idea of preparing to win one game. And he doesn't ever say, okay, we got to try something else here. These guys have all understood what it takes to win one game. That means your daily routine. That means you have to come up with a game plan. That means you have to think about each at-bat, have an approach. All the things that go into it. I have to go out and touch the ball 50 times with Gary Jones before I go out in the outfield. They've learned all of those things in real time for these rookies, and the fact that he never deviates from that, this coaching staff gets these guys to do it and buy in. Again, other teams talk about it, but the commitment that this team shows is unbelievable to me. And it's all a testament to him. I always go back to why this approach works for AJ. There's been no other manager in history that's had a 100-win team and then done what he did. Win 100 more games the next year and more games the year after that.
Yeah.
You only do that if you get your team to buy into that win today's game approach. Your head's where your feet are. He makes fun of it, but it works.
Well, he makes fun of everything,
Yeah.
including all of us, and rightfully so. And
All right, for you?
I just want one more. Yeah.
go.
Just who puts the biggest smile on my face is Tarek Skubal. So, but yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Who's who's yours?
Cy Young.
They're all good ones. Like I probably would have said Parker Meadows if nobody was off the board. Torque is an option as well, because coming up into a playoff chase when you don't have to be the guy and you can be a guy who's joining it with the boys, I think is a different sensibility for him. So I'm happy for him for that. My answer, based on our podcast with him, just because I know the power of putting your mind to something and doing it and having success with it, and then saying, like, I want to be an everyday guy and doing it, I think Matt Vierling is a good answer to that
he's been
question,
just
too.
solid as
Like,
a rock,
he said, I want to pull the ball in the air more. And gosh darn it, he's done it.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be an everyday guy. He had to because of injury, and he's forced his way into the lineup most days. I think that's a great story of this whole thing, too. That kind of gets pushed under the rug a little bit because he's so steady.
Yeah.
But I do think he's like a driving force of this thing.
And just a great example, and I know we've got to wrap up here, a great example of all the interactions that take place, and you guys know this, all the interactions that take place every day between a more veteran guy or a young guy or whatever it is that lead to a moment and can lead to a team playing at a higher level. And him just talking to us when we were in Baltimore, I think it was Baltimore, might have been Kansas City, where Jay Shung had that long at bat and he struck out, but it set up Vierling then walking on 4 pitches in a key moment. Young's going up, he's pinch hitting, he's like, hey, you got to be aggressive here. I mean, just that little advice, and we've seen that time and time and time again. But Matt Vierling is a great example of all the things that go on that we don't see, that happen daily.
He's
that
like
make
the
this team
veteran, one of the
better.
veteran guys.
Yeah. At 27.
We have to roll, but I want to
You
say...
think you're going to get off that easy?
Yeah, because I got the rap signal.
Okay.
But I do, we can do another, we should do this yearly,
I mean-
honestly, with the group of us. But I will say...
You wanted to ask one question.
I got one
Oh,
question.
jeez.
Because you can't.
The rap signal!
So, long story short, we've all worked in Detroit. We've been here, we've established families, all this. This is your first year, really, embedding yourself into Detroit. What is something, because this is the year of the unexpected. Mm-hmm. What is something Jason Benetti, when he took a job in Detroit, has happened or has noticed that was unexpected about coming into this city to work?
Just the sheer, and this is because of Ernie Harwell and because of you and because of the people who've had great longevity in this job, the sheer care for everything that comes out of our mouths and how much people live with what we talk about. And I don't mean that in any arrogant way. I just anytime somebody says, "Hey, Jason, we're glad to have you here," it's because of the reverence people have for the job. And it's because of you, and it's because of Ernie, and it's because of George Kell, and it's because of everybody who sat in the chair. And I knew I was getting into a place where people loved their sports. And I knew that there was a litany of sports announcers who have done great work, and one of them I get a chance to call a friend. I'm pointing at you. Nobody ever knows where I'm looking.
Use your finger.
Break the tension.
Yeah. Use your finger.
But it is a glorious thing to know that people care so much about what you do on a daily basis, and it leads me to say, like, this round table, people don't see the fun we have behind the scenes when we get to do games together, but in both booths, right?
Yeah.
And I just want to say thank you to all of you for being such good partners and such good friends, and so caring. A fly was flying around there, but so caring about just having a great time while baseball is happening. It's been a true joy, and your welcome and the fans' welcome has meant so much more than any of you know. So thank you.
No, that you guys have made this so much fun. I got to include Bobby Scales in this as well.
Yeah, everybody. It just happens that.
Yeah, but it just makes our jobs that much more fun. The insight that you guys add every day, and it just gets into great baseball discussions. And this team has given us a lot to talk about.
That they have.
A lot of fun.
And there's going to be plenty
come.
more.
More to come.
I hope we're right here
This isn't the last episode?
of this regular season.
Well,
Could be special postseason editions.
special postseason edition, maybe.
I do think once a year round table with the group of us, though,
All right.
Right.
like the sports reporters,
Yeah. Only better.
but more charming. Now I have to issue an apology to Mitch Albom, I think.
I don't even know who that is.
Oh, now you have to issue an apology to Mitch Albom. Sorry, Mitch. Love doing your show. You should have Andy on at some point. And Sven Feiger Law, have a seat.
Season 1.
Let's go! Rap party!